Ken Kaneki. He's fully released now, and with him comes his 3 perks: Forever Entwined, Hex, Nothing But Misery, and None Are Free. So let's take a look at how useful these 3 are for Sadako. We'll start with Forever Entwined. Whenever a survivor takes damage by any means, Forever Entwined will gain a token up to 8. For each token that you have, the speed at which you pick up, drop, and hook survivors is increased by 4%, leading to a maximum of a 32% increase. Keep in mind you do not gain any tokens for grabs, such as out of lockers. So the pickup time, which is naturally 3 seconds, gets about a full second shaved off at max stacks. The hook and drop times, which are normally around 2 seconds each, get a little more than half a second shaved off for each of them. Dropping survivors does not come in handy too often in the average game, usually only ideal when a hook gets sabotaged or when you notice a bunch of survivors scurrying around after pickup that you could then choose to pressure while leaving the initial slug on the ground. Getting a bit more than an extra half second in these cases isn't really that significant, I wouldn't say. There is a Sadako specific reason to drop that Forever Entwined could be useful in though. This is a scenario where you are carrying a survivor and you notice another one beelining towards a powered TV. If you drop them in time, you could project to that TV before the other survivor is able to take or deposit a tape from it. This could give you a big momentum swing against them if they are high in condemn stacks, and especially if they are also injured. Seeing this scenario, though, you'll have to consider a lot of factors in a very short amount of time to decide whether the drop is even worth it. Things to consider would be whether or not you'd even have enough time to demanifest and project to that TV, whether the survivor you're carrying is holding a tape or if the other survivor is holding a tape, if the other survivor is injured or not, how many stacks the other survivor has compared to the one you're carrying, if the survivor you're carrying would wiggle off if you happen to drop them, and so on. All of these things you're going to want to consider and measure to determine whether it's more valuable to you to hook the survivor that you're carrying and to let the other interact with the TV, or if it would be more valuable for you to stop the other survivor from interacting with that TV. This can admittedly be quite difficult to measure in a short amount of time, but the time saved by Forever Entwined could make these niche scenarios a bit easier, giving you a bit more time to come to a conclusion and capitalize on the scenario. How about the hook speed increase? How useful is that? For the average killer, the major benefits would be from 2 scenarios. One where you know a gen is moments from popping and you have pain resonance, and the other when you notice other survivors nearby to start chase with them a bit sooner. The first scenario is very niche, and the second does not see a major benefit from the slight time save here. Sadako, however, has the same things to consider with the hook time saves that she does with the drop time saves. The exact same scenario can benefit from faster hooking, being when you notice a survivor about to interact with a TV while carrying somebody. If you're close enough to a hook, you'll get the same time save as you would by dropping them that you would by hooking them. This will obviously be more valuable than dropping them, but it of course relies on you being close enough to a hook to actually get the necessary value out of it. Then we have the last benefit of Forever Entwined that the average killers are most interested in, being the faster pickup speed. With Forever Entwined, we pick up a full second quicker, which is quite significant when it comes to avoiding saves, primarily. It's to the point where others consider this to be Lightborn 2.0, nullifying flashlight saves and even pallet saves. With Forever Entwined, this of course is not a guarantee. Strong survivors would catch on to this perk being in play after only one failed attempt, allowing them to adapt for all future attempts. Because of this alone, I consider Lightborn the superior anti-save perk, not counting potential pallet saves of course. Regardless of all this, though, we have to consider Sadako's natural ability to fake pickups with her demanifest animation. Although this fakeout does not have a high success rate against strong survivors when it comes to free hits and downs, it does cause some hasty survivors hiding nearby waiting for a save to reveal themselves prematurely, which gives slightly weaker anti-save value to Sadako base kit as compared to what Forever Entwined will give. With this in mind, Forever Entwined's pickup speed is naturally less beneficial to Sadako than it is to other killers, but not by too much. It's only natural to be curious of the combined effects of Forever Entwined and Fire Up, since Fire Up also quickens pickup and drop speeds. You might think that this combo could be pretty nasty, however there is unfortunately a limit to this max stacking effect here for pickup and drop speed. Regardless of your tokens on Forever Entwined or Fire Up, you will only be able to reach a maximum of plus 42% speed. This combo for Forever Entwined could give you up to an additional quarter of a second saved on pickups and about a 20th of a second saved on drops. Despite this, I would not ever recommend using Forever Entwined and Fire Up together. It's very redundant and it soaks up a precious perk slot. Although Fire Up only has a maximum of plus 20% speed, and its tokens rely on you losing the match as opposed to Forever Entwined's requiring you to be doing well, Fire Up, including pallets, wall, and gen breaks, as well as vaults, in my opinion gives significantly more value and synergy potential than Forever Entwined does. All things considered now, I would say Forever Entwined is unreliable for Sadako. It can give you value in potentially every game, but survivors can adapt to its presence very quickly and avoid it when it comes to pickups, and benefits for drop and hook speeds are very niche, unfortunately. Next on the Kaneki list is Hex Nothing But Misery. Nothing But Misery starts deactivated. After you've landed your 8th basic attack on the survivors, a random dull totem will light, activating Nothing But Misery. Once active, every subsequent basic attack will give the survivor a minus 5% hindered status effect for 15 seconds. On the 8th hit, Nothing But Misery is revealed to the affected survivor and to any other survivors subsequently hit afterwards. If Nothing But Misery is cleansed at any point in the match, it will be permanently disabled. It will not reactivate on a new totem if you happen to get 8 more basic attacks in. So I always get excited when I see a new Hex perk, since Hex builds are very strong for Sadako, giving survivors an extra objective to do. So how does Nothing But Misery score up to some of the other good ones? For reference, average speed killers will gain a total of 9 meters on survivors throughout 15 seconds when running in a straight line naturally. With Nothing But Misery, those 9 meters are boosted to 12 meters, meaning that we gain an additional 3 meters on survivors running in a straight line with Nothing But Misery throughout 15 seconds. Also keep in mind that applying the 5% hindrance will naturally give the affected survivor a post-hit speed boost, which is plus 65% speed for about 1.8 seconds. With this, you also have to take into account the 2.7 second attack cooldown, where you wipe your weapon, both of these making Nothing But Misery's effectiveness a bit weaker than if it were to be applied without having to hit the survivor first. Here's how long it takes to catch back up to a survivor after hitting them if you both immediately run in a straight line. While the 3 additional meters gained on the survivor during the 15-second hindrance seems small on paper, it saves us honestly not a bad amount of time. With Nothing But Misery, we secure the down exactly 13 seconds after the initial hit, while it would take us about 16.75 seconds without it. Also, at least as it relates to the timers that we see on screen here, the number after the decimal is the frames, not milliseconds, so the left is 16 seconds and 44 out of 60 frames. So we save just about 4 seconds. 4 seconds sounds pretty good on paper, time-wise, since seconds are critical in Chase, of course. However, the survivor still has 13 seconds to reach another loop, pallet, or window, or just otherwise safe area. Unless the majority of the map's resources have already been shredded away, it's very rare that the survivor will be unable to find safety within those 13 seconds. The other bad aspect of this perk is that you have to activate it with 8 hits. Before you do that, you will not get any value out of this. This is 4 hooks worth of hits, so Nothing But Misery will only start helping you starting early mid-game at best. In the background game playing now, it took me 3 minutes and 45 seconds to activate Nothing But Misery. Many games will take even longer than this to get this going. The elephant in the room for Nothing But Misery is, of course, that this weak effect is tied to a Hex totem, meaning that this can be cleansed without you ever getting any value out of it if a survivor notices the totem light up in front of them. You could work hard to get your 8 hits, finally getting Nothing But Misery active to synergize with the rest of your build maybe, and then get the totem cleansed before you even get your 9th hit. There are 2 main issues with Nothing But Misery being a Hex. One is that it starts deactivated. You don't get immediate value out of using this perk. Luckily, it can't be cleansed during that time, but not having immediate value is just simply inconsistent here. A good example of a Hex that starts deactivated that is good is Face the Darkness. Despite Face the Darkness starting deactivated, you could activate it with a single hit, and the benefits this perk gives to Sadako are much stronger than Nothing But Misery gives, despite Nothing But Misery taking 8 times longer to activate. The second issue of Nothing But Misery being a Hex is that its effects are just simply weak. Hexes are meant to be very powerful perks since they can be fully removed by the survivors. A weak perk being able to be deleted by survivors is just silly. So not only does Nothing But Misery take a while to activate, the benefits it gives you once active are borderline unnoticeable at times. Despite how bad of a perk I think this is, does it synergize with Sadako in any way specifically? It can, mostly in helping confirm aggressive projection hits, essentially hitting a survivor and applying the hindrance with Nothing But Misery, then projecting to a TV that they are running towards to fully bypass the post-hit speed boost that the survivor gets. With their minus 5% speed, this can make getting an aggressive projection hit on them a bit easier than it otherwise would be. That being said, I do happen to think that this perk is a bit stronger on Sadako than it is on the average killer. The last thing I wanted to discuss with this perk is the stacking of hindrance and haste effects and how that stacking is being wiped out with the upcoming patch. If hinder and haste stacking was included, Nothing But Misery could benefit from stacking effects, like through stacking batteries included with post-projection speed boost to increase Sadako's speed in the chase, or through maybe even using Sadako's own telephone add-on to make survivors 5% hindrance and 8% hindrance instead, which would actually pair quite nicely despite telephone otherwise being pretty awful. This won't work with the next patch though, so the synergy potential for Nothing But Misery is unfortunately very weak now. The best pair in my opinion would be Save the Best for last, to make the attack cooldown slower to maximize the time save and chase after the initial hit. Overall, this is a very weak perk for Sadako. I'll be honest, even if this was not a hex perk and was always active, I would still struggle to find good reasons to use it consistently. With its required setup time, its weak benefits, and its weak synergy potential, this perk is simply not worth the perk slot in most instances. Wrapping us up, we have None Are Free. When using None Are Free, each time you hook an individual survivor for the first time, you get 1 token up to 4. When the last gen is completed, all windows and upright pallets are blocked for survivors for 16 seconds per token, up to 64 seconds. So obviously this is an endgame perk, only giving any sense of value after the survivors already completed every generator. For endgame scenarios, the value None Are Free gives is actually quite nice. With windows and upright pallets being blocked for up to 64 seconds, there is borderline nothing survivors can do to avoid getting hit in chases now. This of course synergizes very well with other endgame perks, primarily No-Ed, but also No Way Out to limit their options even more. With these 3 perks, the survivor's only options are to hide for 64 seconds until None Are Free deactivates, or cleanse No-Ed. Otherwise, there is no stopping the killer during the 64-second window. For Sadako specifically, None Are Free is great too in these endgame scenarios since it makes chases, one of Sadako's weakest components, trivial, and 64 seconds is quite a while. I would not really want to use this alone though. No-Ed I would say is the best synergy perk to combine here, preventing scenarios where the last gen pops and everyone is healthy. In a scenario like this, a significant amount of None Are Free's duration could be soaked up by a single survivor, especially if some endurance perks like Dead Hard are involved. With No-Ed, this is not a concern, and we move a bit faster as well. The runner-up synergy perk I would say is No Way Out, making the exit gates unavailable for just about the same amount of time that None Are Free is active. With this, the survivor's best option is to hide and wait out the time for both. Any survivors found during this time are as good as downs, quite honestly. Some other options to pair with None Are Free would be Terminus, to act similarly to No-Ed, assuming that some survivors were already injured, and also Remember Me, to even further delay the exit gate option. So this is a great option for an endgame build, but are endgame builds even good for Sadako in general? Not inherently. Endgame builds are as good on Sadako as they are on really any killer, I would say. Personally, I don't like using endgame builds too much, since it dedicates at least 1 perk for games that you would otherwise lose as some insurance. I would much prefer to get some consistent perk value all throughout the match as opposed to having some insurance options if I happen to lose. In endgame scenarios, it is entirely possible that many survivors are high in condemn stacks. With an endgame build, you could buy yourself more time to condemn these survivors and kill them, even if you haven't hooked them before. But if you haven't hooked them yet, then None Are Free and No Way Out actually are just both weaker than they otherwise would be, so this isn't a super reliable way to kill survivors that have evaded you all game. If you condemn a survivor shortly after the last gen pops, None Are Free almost guarantees that you'll kill them. You'll know exactly where they are and be able to project close to them to start chase as soon as possible, and then even if they are healthy, you could avoid body blocks and get 2 hits on them before None Are Free deactivates. The only way a condemned survivor could avoid death when None Are Free activates is if their teammates open a gate for them close by. Otherwise, there is no reason you shouldn't be able to kill them. These scenarios won't always happen, of course, and in normal scenarios it would honestly be best to slug as many survivors as possible during None Are Free's duration, since if you choose to hook survivors that you down, a big portion of your None Are Free time is soaked up by the time it takes you to hook them. All in all, None Are Free works well in a dedicated build with at least 1 other endgame perk to complement it. Alone, I would consider this to be simply too unreliable. For what it's worth, None Are Free is, in my opinion, one of the best endgame perks in the game. But again, it is endgame only, so it's usually just an insurance perk. If you win the game smoothly, this slot will be wasted. So, those are my opinions on all of Ken Kaneki's perks. Unfortunately, I don't think they're all too great if I'm being quite honest. But let me know what you think. Do you have good success with using Ken Kaneki's perks? What kind of synergy options do you use as well? Could all be interesting things to consider.